After dropping 6 straight games, man, it feels good to be on this side of it. The Bucks finally get a win, a big win at that, defeating the Utah Jazz by 23 points with a 100-123 victory. Doc Rivers did something a little different, inserting Andre Jackson Jr. into the starting lineup. Is this something that should continue? And plus, Dame and Giannis continue to dazzle with a combined 65 points. How is their chemistry starting to develop even more? We'll discuss all of that and more on the other side of the intro.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, and you can catch me weekly on the Technical File podcast, as well as the Pack-A-Day podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, the founder of BrewHoop.com and longtime voice of the pod, and we thank you for tuning in, and we also thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube, and in addition, we're also in newsletter form. The Locked On Bucks daily newsletter, a one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox Monday through Friday. Sign up for free right now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA and win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Frank, the Bucks were running their game tonight. Finally, a victory. Had some shades in the first half there of that last Jazz-Bucks game in Milwaukee when the Jazz were going crazy from three. They were also going crazy from three in this game. This season, the Jazz averaged 11 made threes per game. They had 14 in the first half against the Bucks in this particular game. But luckily, they only finished the game making 13 or 17 of them in total. They went 3 of 15 in the second half, but the Bucks were finally able to get a win. So let's just start here, Frank. How are you feeling? This feeling of victory being back on your shoulders after a Bucks dominant win in the second half there.
I mean, it's got to be the best feeling of a win over a bad team that probably I can recall feeling, in quite some time. The Bucks now have 2 wins. They have beaten the 2 worst teams in basketball, the Sixers and the Bucks. Or Sixers. Bucks are no longer. Bucks were one of the worst teams. We're tied for the worst record in basketball, but and now the Jazz. So let's just say not exactly the kind of game that you start showing as a signature win of why this team can contend for a championship. But I think to me the big story was we talked last game about the silver lining of the Cleveland game in Cleveland was the young guys, specifically Andre Jackson and particular AJ Green, and then asking the question, can those guys stack games? Can they become more consistent to the point where you can rely on them every night to do the things that we know that they're capable of doing, which are very diverse between the two of those guys. And I think when I think about this game, I think of Andre, and especially that first quarter, the Jazz hit 3 threes very quickly, but the Bucks kind of took those shots, and Andre Jackson gets a steal, breakaway dunk to start, has another play where he gets they get a fast break. He takes the pass from, I think it was Dame, and dunks in transition. He has 4 steals on the night, and I felt like his just, the defensive energy and, his lateral movement and ability to keep ball handlers in front of him is just like so far beyond like anybody else on the team. That even though there wasn't like the Jazz are not a team you look at and be like, oh, they have like that single guy, like, oh, you got to stop Colin Sexton or bust, right? Like, it's not, the Jazz aren't quite like that, but just being able to put him at the point of attack and knowing that like he's going to make life difficult on the other team's lead ball handler, whatever, is just such a big thing. And obviously Gary Trent's been in a big shooting slump as well. Did not get out of that tonight. Very interesting how little Gary Trent played again tonight.
Doc did say after the game, part of that was because he had back spasms in the second half.
So Yeah, and I was gonna say too. I mean, like Gary Trent seeing his minutes slashed, DeLon Wright DNPing, right?
Yeah.
Very notable given what we expected from those guys coming to the year. But look, I would just look at it as a positive in the sense that this is because Andre Jackson was doing what we wanted Andre Jackson to do. He was a big part of them jumping out to, I think it was 23-14 lead early. Um, and look, they took those body blows from the Jazz, right? The Jazz did not just come in and, it felt like the first couple weeks of the season that the Bucks needed the other team to just suck it up from three for them to have a chance of winning. That's how they won in Philly. We said it at the time, like that was sort of papering over some rough aspects of that Philly win, like the offensive rebounding and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But tonight to run into a team that shot it extremely well, that shot over 40% from three at 17 threes. Bucks also shot it well, 15 of 35. But to win a game going away when you didn't just have a big 3-point advantage, like that actually means you played good basketball in the year
Yeah.
2024. To beat a team by 23 points without a 3-point advantage means he did a lot of other things well. And we talked, a lot in the last couple of pods about the Bucks losing games on the margins,
Mm-hmm.
turning the ball over more than the other team, not getting as many offensive rebounds as the other team, even though their defensive rebounding has gotten better. They just do not generate second chances themselves.
Right.
And so just, it's like if you just don't give yourself as many opportunities, your margin of error is lower. And tonight it felt like they kind of turned that on their head. I mean, 13 steals. I
Yeah.
think I don't know what the fast break points ended up when. I saw at one point it was like 34 to not very much on
39 fast break points for the Bucks tonight.
yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And I think
Yeah.
it started with, Andre doing the things that we mentioned earlier that he was doing. And then, of course, just a whole lot of Giannis Antetokounmpo just being in absolute attack mode whenever he got the ball. And then the last thing I'd call out just in terms of like flow of the game, we
Mm-hmm.
talk about Andre in the first quarter, helping them get off to the fast start. Utah obviously comes back, hits a bunch of threes. Obviously, they have a really good run in the third quarter with Dame and Giannis leading that and extending the lead, taking a back and forth game and building a double digit
Mm-hmm.
lead. But I thought going into the fourth quarter, I was joking with Eric Name, our friend from The Athletic. We were, kind of joking via text, and I said like, "Oh boy, here comes the Jazz 10-0 run here with the Bucks up 11 going to the fourth quarter, right? Like, just this is just the way it's been." And to their credit, like the Bucks did not do that. And
Yeah.
AJ Green, I want to give AJ Green a shout out. Both ends, first possession, he covered off, closed out on his man in the corner, forced a turnover
Mm-hmm.
on the first possession for the Jazz. I think he had a steal a few. I'm trying to remember what it was. He had two good defensive possessions. I'm trying to remember what the other one. I think he may have had a steal then a few possessions later, and then he hits a couple threes. And again, talking about stacking wins and stacking performances. Well, the big guns, Giannis and Dame, they are stacking performances.
Yep.
We'll talk about them, I'm sure. But those young guys, Andre and AJ in particular, they stack performances as well. And you know, with some of the veterans struggling, we saw a little bit of life from Bobby Portis again tonight as well. But if those guys are going to do the stuff that we've seen the last two games with some regularity, AJ's not going to hit
Mm-hmm.
7 threes every game.
Right.
But if those guys are going to come in and give you, those shots in the arm on both ends, then all of a sudden, like you can absorb veterans having bad shooting nights or the other
Mm-hmm.
team hitting 17 threes. So yeah, I think, again, like it's sad to be like, oh, the best performance of the Bucks season. Doc finally got that like 48-minute sustained effort against the freaking Jazz. But you got to start somewhere. And like I think we're all sick of like trying to find silver linings in
Yeah.
losses to Cleveland. So going into the first night of a back-to-back where you have to go to MSG tomorrow night, Giannis was
Mm-hmm.
dinged up. I mean, this is about as close to a must-win as you're going to find 2 weeks into a season. And with New York and Boston coming up on the calendar, you desperately needed to bank a win tonight, and to do
Yep.
it in ultimately convincing fashion. I mean, I'm sure just a lot of relief and just happiness and satisfaction on that locker room, and they can appreciate it for about, 2 hours, and then they got to get on a plane and go to New York. But yeah, at least for a day, Camille, Bucks fans, we can at least feel okay about our team and some optimism that maybe this team can still maybe figure something out. But again,
Yeah.
they got a hole to dig out of, and they took their first shovel of dirt and threw it out of the ditch today.
Yeah, I mean, to everything that you said, I definitely agree. I feel like Andre Jackson Jr. really came in and provided a needed level of energy for the Bucks, where it was like his effort was contagious in certain aspects. The fact that he had 4 steals, Dame had 4 steals tonight as well, just active hands. I want to also shout out Torian Prince because there were quite a few possessions between Andre Jackson Jr. and Torian Prince where they're switching and they're just causing havoc on Colin Sexton or whoever it is that they are trying to hound at the point of attack. So he had some solid defensive minutes as well. And to your point about the Bucks just having a joke with Eric of like, hey, we're heading into the fourth. Here comes that Jazz run. Like we've gotten used to it, but we saw this Bucks team down 4 at halftime, outscore the Jazz 66-39 to finish the game. They went plus 27 in the third and fourth quarters combined. And again, you had Giannis and Dame combining for 65 points. And the way that the two of them were playing off of each other, where especially in the third quarter, they just kind of were like, hey, look, we're going to take off for a bit. If we get double teamed or we can't get the shot off, we're going to pass the ball around. But like we're looking for our shot and we're going to be aggressive with it. And that third quarter for the two of them, I think, really turned things around for this Bucks team. So when we come back after this, deeper look into Giannis and Dame's performance in this game. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Pick with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action in sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and of course, Wisconsin. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this NBA season. Which players are going to go off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks puts its members first, so withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money quick, fast, and in a hurry, and that's what I love most about them. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. I repeat, download the app today, use the code Locked On NBA, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. This next segment is also brought to you by FanDuel. So get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you're placing your bets. So visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Again, fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Dame and Giannis, freak time came through for the Bucks in this game. As mentioned, the 65 combined points between the two of them, and when you look at the individual stat lines, it's impressive. Giannis had 31 points, 16 rebounds. He actually became the Bucks' all-time leader in offensive rebounds in this game as well, surpassing our boy MJ. So he holds that record amongst a bunch of others in Bucks franchise history. You had Dame with 34 points in this game. He was 4 of 11 from 3, but the threes that he were hitting were big, and he was also able to draw some fouls on those 3-point shot attempts as well. He had 7 assists to go along with that, in addition to 4 rebounds, 4 steals. What were you seeing from Dame and Giannis in this game? Because I felt, like I mentioned in the first segment, the third quarter is when you really saw the two of them working off of each other really well and able to really take this Bucks lead to the next level.
I mean, I think with Giannis, the aggression, with Walker Kessler in particular, I think Walker Kessler had a few good defensive possessions against Giannis, right? He's a really good young shot blocker, not going to make it easy on Giannis. And, we see it with Giannis, like when he sees guys like Kessler, like young guys, big guys, that, especially when he gets like that 1v1 matchup, like he wants
Wants
to
to test
bully
it.
those guys. He wants to go at those guys. And not like a super efficient. I think it was 11 for 21 or something like that
Yeah.
tonight. So not like the most efficient just from the field night for Giannis, but did not take a three yet again, right? So that kind of trend of just really playing mid-range and in and just looking to attack all the time, especially in transition, I think was, the kind of standout. And, as you mentioned, like whether you look at the raw fast break numbers or, the points added per 100 possessions and transition number that Cleaning
Mhm.
Glass uses, like I think they're like plus 16, which is nuts tonight, by far their best number of the season. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think it's when you're not having to play half court offense all the time against a set defense and against a really good defense, which, let's be honest, not like, Utah has maybe they have Kessler, maybe you
Mhm.
could point at a couple guys as individual defenders who are solid, but for the most part, like, they don't have the defensive personnel that you would need to be able to shut down players the caliber of Dame and Giannis. So, yeah, I mean, I think those guys honestly just kind of playing within themselves and just attacking, Giannis making free throws tonight, 9 out of 12,
Yeah.
which was a welcome sight to see. And so, I mean, again, I don't know if there's nothing revolutionary, right? Obviously we saw enough of, I think, the screen setting between Giannis and Dame. Some pick and roll stuff that did work. But for the most part, I think just those guys just being aggressive and
Mhm.
looking to attack a defense that was ripe to be attacked. And uh, I think with Dame coming into the year, I think the biggest concern was, is he at an age where it's just hard for him to be at a high level night in and night out. And 2 years ago, obviously, he was at a super high, consistent level in Portland, scoring 32
Mhm.
points a game. Different scenario here in Milwaukee, just in terms of how much the ball he's going to have. But I think he's at almost 29 points per game now, with including having a 4-point game mixed in there. So he's obviously been on a heater, and he's even had games where he didn't shoot great from three and has still scored a ton because he's been able to draw fouls and get to the line. And I think the style of officiating, let's just say, against for him, I think has been encouraging.
Yeah.
I think it's been better certainly than it was in the second half last year when the officiating was tighter than it was early last season. We can debate whether that's a good thing for the sport, but for a Bucks fan with Damian Lillard on your team, like I think you're pretty happy about that. And so, yeah, I mean, for him to be playing at this kind of high level is encouraging. And Friday night becomes obviously another test, like a
Yep.
marquee matchup against the Knicks, against another guy who, coming into a year ago, no one would have said Jalen Brunson is better than Damian Lillard. Now coming into this year, everyone would say that Jalen Brunson, is
Mhm.
on a higher level than Damian Lillard. Well, I mean, if you look at the numbers now, Damian Lillard seems like he's coming back for, you know, to try to prove to people that he's still that guy. And so I'm excited to see those two match up.
Yep.
I don't think Dame's going to be guarding Jalen Brunson one-on-one or vice versa a whole lot. I think probably is what you're going to see Andre Jackson tomorrow night defending Brunson, which we saw last year as a rookie. They
Mhm.
used him in that capacity as well. Um, so I'm excited, for Dame that he obviously had that one really horrible game, but even with the losses against Cleveland, like was playing at a really high level, and he just kind of continued to keep that up. I loved seeing him get to the rim repeatedly tonight as well, because if he still has enough bursts to get himself some easy baskets, obviously
Mhm.
that's really encouraging. And even driving right at Kessler a couple times, he had that one really nice lefty finish where he used his body to finish over Kessler. So, with Giannis, it's like Giannis being Giannis, it
Right.
was a lot of, I think, what we saw. But with Dame, I think you mentioned the steals, maybe a little higher engagement level defensively, which was good to see. They were able to hide him on Cody Williams,
Mhm.
during at the start of the first and third quarters, which was probably helpful. Um, and tomorrow, obviously, it'll be a bit of a different story just because there's not as many places to hide against the New York Knicks. But
Probably
yeah,
Josh
just
Hart.
yeah, could be. Yeah, make Josh Hart, be an
Mhm.
attacker, or again, like Giannis, right? Like
Or
you,
yeah.
he's a natural guy to put Giannis on just because you don't mind kind of daring him a bit to shoot threes. So we'll see. But this was a game they needed to win, and Dame and Giannis both played like guys that
Mhm.
knew the stakes and knew they needed wins. And fortunately, Giannis didn't look like he was, missing anything off, from a physical standpoint with that adductor strain that had him questionable. So having to play him in a back-to-back when he's dealing with some injury is
Right.
not what
Not
anybody
ideal.
wanted. But obviously you hope that he's fine and ready to go tomorrow night, because Bucks kind of need to start playing. And again, as much as they're down in the standings, like they're like what, 2 games back of the 3 seed or something like that. Like the
Mhm.
standings are, the East is like pretty miserable right now, aside from Cleveland and Boston. So there's absolutely an opportunity to stay in the mix here for a high seed. So hopefully the Bucks can kind of just get the ship righted and maybe actually beat a team that isn't horrible at some point here. They're gonna have a couple chances against the Knicks and Celtics. So if you just get one of those games, I think I would
I
be totally
agree.
fine with it. Just as a step forward and show that you can compete at that level. Give us 2 competitive games. If you can win both, that'd be incredible. If you win one, okay, right? But just don't have a step back, right? I think is kind of what we're hoping for now.
Truly. And to your point about the back-to-back for the Bucks today against the Jazz, tomorrow night against the Knicks in New York. One thing I did like was the fact that Giannis only played 30 minutes in this game tonight, being able to have that victory cigar in the fourth. Although Dame put in a lot of minutes, we saw Dame play really heavy minutes in the first quarter. He finished with 37 minutes on the night. But to your point about his 2-point percentages, that's something with Dame that I feel like is a barometer. Like when Dame's able to get on the edge, when Dame's able to finish around the rim and get those buckets as well, it just seems like the whole rest of the game flows so much easier for him. I mentioned that he was 4 of 11 from 3. So doing quick math, that'll put him at 8 of 11 from 2-point range in this game, which again, you love to see that from Dame, because not only is he mixing it up at the rim, he's giving you the step backs in the mid range. He's just trying to find his shot on 3 different levels. And I love seeing that from him, especially given the fact that this is the third game coming off of that terrible game in Memphis where he only had 4 points, and he responded against Cleveland with 41 and then 36 and now 34 against Utah. So seeing Dame come out of that game with some added energy was really cool to see, really nice to see that he is stacking performances himself, as well as the chemistry with him and Giannis just continuing to develop, and seeing the two of them making plays off of one another and going forward from there. But I do want to talk to you a bit too, Frank, about the bench. We mentioned Bobby Portis a little bit. The Bucks bench was looking rough early on in that game, but they were able to kind of withstand and turn the tides a bit as the game went on. So a bit more talk about Bobby and the bench after this. Skims has been a game changer in the underwear game since its debut. Like originally it was something only for us, only for the ladies, but Skims has now also launched a men's line as well. And if the men's line is anywhere near as comfortable as the women's is, you're going to be in for a treat. So fellas, Skims has you covered with various styles for whatever suits you best. From cotton or stretch boxer briefs to cotton or stretch briefs, Skims got you. So shop Skims Men at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you. So after you place your order, select podcast in the survey and then select our show in the drop down menu that follows. Also, if you're looking for perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims also just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, which is also available at skims.com. So, fellas, head to skims.com and shop Skims Men's for all of your boxer and brief needs. And again, if you're looking for additional holiday gifts, Skims has you covered for that. So, check it out and let them know Locked On NBA and Locked On Bucks sent you. All right, Frank, like as I mentioned, Bobby Portis minutes today, because when you look at the bench rotation in of itself, the big minutes came from Bobby, who played 27. You had AJ Green, who played 18 minutes. You had Pat Connaughton, who played 17. You had Gary Trent Jr., as we mentioned in the first half, had a quick stint, 8 minutes, didn't see him too much. Doc said he had some back spasms. He didn't like the way that Gary was moving in the second quarter, so he decided to pull him. And those were that was the main rotation for this team in this particular game. And early on, it was not looking great for the bench. Like with about 8.5 minutes left in the second quarter, I took a look because I couldn't believe how the score was flipping. That second quarter started, the Jazz went on a 13-4 run to open it up. And the plus minus for the Bucks bench was atrocious at that moment. Like Bobby was a minus 14, PC was minus 15, Gary Trent Jr. was a minus 14. Even AJ Green at that time was minus 9. They even dragged Giannis's plus minus down at that moment to a minus 2. And he was the only starter at that time who had a plus or a negative plus minus. But as the game went on, the game flow continued. The bench was able to kind of steady itself. And when you look at the final numbers for him, Bobby finishes a plus 2. Pat Connaughton finishes a plus 1. AJ Green's a plus 13. And again, plus minus is not the end all be all when it comes to evaluating performance at all, but I think it offers a helpful snapshot of just how the tide of the game was changing for the Bucks. And they weren't going to be able to pull off that second half comeback in itself since they were down 4 going to halftime and then get a lead, sustain it without better play from the bench. And I think as the game went on, you just saw them figuring out ways to be effective.
Yeah, interesting that when you look at kind of where the minutes have gone. I mean, you mentioned Gary Trent, the injury I think played a role tonight, but regardless, I mean, he came off the bench for the first time. That was the big headline. In the afternoon was Chris Haynes reporting that Andre was going to start. And I thought it was interesting in the sense that I thought maybe if you're going to start Andre,
For
you
Prince.
know, do you maybe start him for Prince because Prince is starting for Chris? So in terms of, like kind of what would give you more theoretical stability moving forward, that felt like, okay, maybe that's a better balance. And, you let Gary kind of work through his shooting funk with the starting group. But obviously, I think ultimately it made sense. And if you want Andre Jackson to be a long-term starter, then this is what you would do. You would put him in for Gary Trent because now Taurean Prince can go to the bench. God willing, if Chris Middleton plays another basketball game, Camille, then he just comes in for Prince, and then you pretty much, I think defensively that's your best option to have Andre starting between Dame and Chris, and you can use him to kind of just be the pest against whoever the lead ball handler / best wing is. I am curious to see offensively, does Andre's hesitation to shoot not so much threes, but really shoot from anywhere, does that become an issue in particular for Giannis? Because, when Andre's in the dunker spot, like, he doesn't want to actually dunk the ball like, unless it's a breakaway. So to be continued on that, but I mean, I think it's probably the highest potential kind of move you could make, just given that I think it gives the Bucks their best chance at being at least somewhat dynamic defensively. I'm not going to say they're going to be, the 86 Bears on defense or something like that. But giving Andre a lot of minutes, I think at least gives you a chance, just because he totally does sort of just change the energy around a team a little bit on both ends, but especially there. And I think the other thing too is, I mean, what we've seen is, I mean, it's really hard to get the fifth guy a lot of shots. Even if it's a Beasley or Trent type guy who's a very good spot up shooter, the ball just doesn't find those guys when you've got Dame, Giannis, and especially when Chris is back. So that obviously is an argument for bringing a guy like that off the bench. We never saw it last year because Malik basically was healthy all year, and it was death taxes and Malik Beasley starting for the Milwaukee Bucks last year, right? And
Facts.
ultimately they had a terrific net rating whenever Malik was in. So I mean, it worked. But it would have been interesting, I know we talked a lot about it early in the season, like the idea of putting a more defensive oriented guy like an Andre, just to see kind of how that would change the dynamic, especially on defense. But yeah, now we're seeing it, whether it's a panic move or something else. I mean, you call it what you want, but it obviously worked tonight. And I think, overall, like, I think the Bucks fan base, right, I think justifiably has been hungry to see more of AJ and Ajax in particular in the last couple of games. I saw actually Andre's been averaging about 20 minutes a game for the last 3 games. So it wasn't like exactly just like a single game that he played in Cleveland. Like he has been getting more burn for the last few games, but obviously tonight, to be in the starting group and to get the run he did, obviously was a different story than what we've kind of typically seen. So we'll see. As we said, now it's just about stacking good performances. So for AJ, keep knocking down threes at a good rate, and competing defensively the way that he has been, which I think has been really important and effective. And Andre obviously defensively can, just because of his athleticism, can just do stuff that, AJ can't, right? AJ's, I think, a really solid individual defender, but he's not going to make plays out of his area as like a help guy or something like that, right? He's just kind of a guy that you can, I think, it has become very respectable and you can kind of trust on an island, which is really, I think, as much as you could ask for from a guy like him who's really out there for his offense. So, so now I think the interesting question is, like, hopefully those guys continue to earn those minutes, and as you get healthy with, Trent getting through whatever he's dealing with, and then ultimately Chris coming back, what's going to give, right? You've already put DeLon right on the bench. Ryan Rollins played again today. I had a good defensive play to end the third quarter, but for the most part, like Ryan Rollins
really
is fine,
him in
but I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. Like, and maybe I'm being unfair. Like, I don't think he's. And I liked what he did in summer league too. So I mean, he has talent, but I'm not looking at him as a guy that's, like some secret weapon they have to unleash per se. So I think DeLon will get back to playing like some regular minutes. I think it's just a quirk right now of kind of rotations and what's working that he's not been playing the last couple of games. But yeah, I mean, Pat Connaughton in particular, I think, like, I've given Pat plenty of leash over the years. Appreciate your service, Pat, right? NBA champion. But like right now, if like push comes to shove, like, hell yeah, I'm giving Andre Jackson and AJ Green minutes over Pat Connaughton, right? So we'll see. Hopefully that's something Doc has to actually make a decision about, because they're getting healthy soon. But in the meantime, we know that to get through 82 games, you're gonna need more than just 8-9 guys. So it's good to have options, right? It's good to actually have competition for roster spots. And so hopefully guys like Gary Trent in particular gets his shooting back, because certainly history would suggest he will. And if you can survive without him shooting well and uncover, some talent, some young guys, and keep them in the lineup and keep them in the rotation, then all the better.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to NBA play and earning minutes in the rotation, it's really a "what have you done for me lately" type of situation. And Doc mentioned himself that, going into training camp, that AJ Green was somebody in particular who was, high in the rotation, but he had a bad training camp. He had a bad preseason. And we talked about it briefly during the preseason, where I was like, I'm not worried about AJ Green's shooting percentage at the 3 right now. I was like, but I'm keeping an eye on it because he didn't shoot well in the playoffs. Preseason starting, you're not seeing him shoot the ball well. And Doc just said he just kind of lost minutes in the process of camp. But now he's in the process of earning them back. And you can see him and Andre Jackson Jr. doing that in big ways. So the Bucks are back at it tomorrow, or as you're listening to this on Friday, tonight against the Knicks on the second night of a back-to-back. Bucks are in a stretch of 5 games in 7 days. So it is a grind for them right now. But if they can come out with some more wins, we're going to be some happy campers, because the Bucks currently only sit 2 games out of 3rd place in the East. So make sure you all continue to keep it locked into Locked On Bucks if you have not yet already. Also subscribe to the newsletter. Head over to lockedondaily.com and start your day off with the new free Locked On Bucks newsletter. For Frank and myself, we're going to get out of here. Hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll catch you later.